So welcome everyone to our important session today. It's called Help Us Remain, Bring Care for Identity to Care for Dementia. I'm so pleased to collaborate with Egale Canada to host this webinar, where speaker is AJ Adams, and he is the Manager of Communications at Egale Canada. Before we begin our session, I do want to provide our land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that we gather on the traditional territory of a number of First Nations and acknowledge their stewardship of this land throughout the ages. We seek a new relationship with the original peoples of this land, one that is based in honor and deep respect. So some people were just asking about some webinar logistics. Everybody's muted from their microphone, so you don't have to worry about that. As I say, I do encourage people to put comments as we go through the presentations in the chat box. If you have a presentation for AJ during his session, if there's something that comes up, please post it in the Q&A box, and you can do that at any time, and we'll bring those up at the end of the session and have a Q&A with AJ so he can answer any of the questions that you have. We are fortunate to have our ASL interpreters with us today. You'll see Noah at the top of your screen. We do have 2 interpreters that will come on during the webinar today. You can pin the webinar, you can pin the ASL interpreter on your screen. You can also change the view from at the top of your screen. There's little boxes. You can put it into gallery view, which would just be AJ and the interpreter, because I will be going off screen. So it's up to you how you would like to view for your own accessibility needs. We do have a video. I just wanted to remind, we do have a video as well that we will be showing, and I will turn on the closed captioning on my end, but you can also on your own screen enable closed captioning, which is at the bottom screen of yours, and it's you can turn that on or off at your own preferences as well. Just as a reminder, we do have evaluation, just a quick pop-up at the end of the session, which probably takes about 3 minutes to complete. Just check off boxes. We do appreciate your feedback from these sessions. Just gives us guidance about the topic and future ideas that you might have that you would like us to present on. And as mentioned, we are recording today's session, and I will do my best to get it uploaded either today or by tomorrow, along with any of the documents and links that are shared during the webinar today. And just to remind people that this is a public forum, although we can't see people, we do see people's chat boxes and what people are posting. We do appreciate that some people may have personal circumstances that they may want to ask more questions about their situation. We would encourage you to reach out to us directly that we can provide further assistance. So if you have general questions, please post those as well. If you'd like to follow up with ourselves, as we have 2 consultants that will do some follow-up if you have a situation that you'd like further assistance with. Our contact information will be shared at the end of the session today. For those who aren't aware of our organization, Elder Abuse Prevention Ontario is funded through the Ministry for Seniors and Accessibility. We've been implementing Ontario's strategy to combat elder abuse under this ministry since 2003, and we continue to work and strive to make sure that seniors have a strong voice, feel safe and respected. Now, under that strategy, we work under 3 main pillars of that strategy: public awareness, training for staff, and then we work to coordinate services. And as you can imagine, there's many activities and initiatives that happen under each of those pillars. And over time, that is drastically expanded, which is a great thing. So you'll see a lot of campaigns that we get involved in and promote educational significant days that are relating to seniors' rights and respect and health and well-being. We do that on our social media channels as well. We do a lot of specialized training for different sectors that want to advance their skills in recognizing and responding to abuse. And most importantly, we work with our partners. It's you in that community, in our community, wherever you reside, is supporting seniors. So how can we best work together to support them? And in Ontario, our infrastructure is a little bit different than other provinces. So we really do need to rely on each other to develop those pathways to support one another and as agencies to support the clients that we might be working with. So we do work and host elder abuse networks, or we support the networks and the work that they do at a local level to increase the awareness and education and the providers' knowledge when they do have clients in their communities to know where they can refer people for support. So let's get on with our webinar today. So we're pleased to have AJ Adams, as I indicated, who's the manager of communications at Egale Canada. AJ is a communication professional and social change advocate with a passion for 2S LGBTQI and social issues. With over a decade of experience, his career has involved experience in nonprofit and profit sectors in communication, advocacy, and political organizing. He spent much of his career working with seniors in dementia and in healthcare, so today's session should be excellent. Including his work has been the communication officers at the Ontario Games and the Ontario Centres for Learning, Research, Innovation, and Long-Term Care, as some people know as CLRI, as we were just talking about. He also holds a diploma in public relations and a bachelor in community leadership and equity and diversity and human rights. He now works, as I say, at Egale. And Egale is actually a leading organization on 2S LGBTQI issues and people. And we are so fortunate as an organization at Elder Abuse Prevention Ontario to work with Egale on many projects in terms of looking at informing seniors about the protecting their rights, financial abuse, abuse just in general. So pleased to collaborate again. And I'm going to turn the screen over now to my colleague, AJ, to present the presentation. AJ?
Thank you, Renee. Let me share my screen quick, folks. Oh, just 1 second. Let me share with sound here.
Oh, yes.
There we go. Okay.
Perfect.
So thank you for that introduction, Renee. As mentioned, my name is AJ Adams, and I'm here to talk to you today about bringing care to identity to care for dementia. So before I go into the presentation, I do want to recognize the land that I'm presenting from in my home, which is colonially known as Ottawa, Ontario, which is built on the unceded Anishinaabe Algonquin territory. The peoples of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation have lived in this land, in this territory, since time immemorial, and their culture continues to this day to nurture the land and the waterways. I do also recognize that all of us are coming from different communities, so we'd like to recognize all the different First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples across Turtle Island, including Two-Spirit, Indigiqueer, and LGBTQI Indigenous peoples. So as mentioned, my name is AJ Adams, pronouns he, him. I'm the manager of communications at Egale Canada. I hold a diploma in public relations and Bachelor of Arts in community leadership and equity, diversity, and human rights. And I'm super fortunate to be able to combine my education with my passion for queer and trans issues, working for an organization like Egale. Also, as mentioned, a lot of my career has included working within seniors care, dementia care, and the healthcare sectors. So I'm not here today just to do my job and give you a presentation. I'm actually here to talk about something that I'm very passionate about, which is bringing that intersection of dementia and healthcare with equity, diversity, and inclusion. As mentioned, Egale Canada, so Egale is Canada's leading organization for 2S LGBTQI people and issues. And we do a whole bunch of different work, but we do this work so we can improve and save lives through kind of 4 main buckets of work. That includes research, education, awareness, and legal advocacy. And when we do all this work, not just for folks here in Canada, but around the world. And a lot of our work, including our dementia work, encompasses all of these buckets. And you'll see that through this presentation that we're talking about our dementia research, our dementia education, dementia awareness, as well as some dementia legal advocacy work that we're doing. And regardless if it's dementia or anything else that Egale does, our work helps to create societies and systems that reflect the universal truth that all persons are equal and none is other. Or as our tagline says, equal, not other. So over the next 40 minutes, I'll be going over 4 kind of main sections. So first, we'll talk about 2SLGI experiences with dementia. We'll talk about the Help Us Remain campaign that Egale, along with some partners, launched this month for Alzheimer's Awareness Month. We'll talk about how we can create an inclusive future for 2SLGI people living with dementia, looking at advocacy pieces as well as resources from Egale. And then as this presentation is for Elder Abuse Ontario, looking at other ways that Egale can support you through your journey of supporting queer and trans older adults. And hopefully we'll have some time for questions at the end, but as Renee said, feel free to pop questions in to the Q&A section of the webinar platform. So before we dive into what are the experiences of 2SLGI people living with dementia, let's make sure we're all on the same page of what actually is dementia itself. So a common misconception is that dementia is a specific term, or sorry, a specific disease, but rather it's an umbrella term for a set of symptoms that are caused by disorders affecting the brain. So as you can see on the right, there's a variety of different types of dementia from vascular dementia, Alzheimer's, frontotemporal dementia, mixed dementia, which is a mix of a variety of dementias. So these are all the specific diseases, with dementia again being that overall term. And you'll often see Alzheimer's disease or Alzheimer's as a term you'll see most often. And then again, that's because it's the most common. So you'll see organizations like the Alzheimer's Society of Canada, and that's just because it's the most common type. And regardless of what type of dementia someone is diagnosed with, there are common symptoms that overlap amongst all of them. And when we think of symptoms of dementia, the first thing that probably comes to most people's heads is memory loss. And yes, memory loss is a very common symptom when it comes to dementia because of how dementia impacts the brain, both in terms of short-term and long-term memory loss. But there's other symptoms that occur as well. And that can include difficulties with things like thinking, problem solving, or language. And these difficulties are presented in a way that they're so severe that they reduce a person's ability to perform their day-to-day activities. We also see things such as changes in mood and behavior. And regardless if it's memory loss, difficulties of thinking, problem solving, or mood and behavior, dementia usually presents itself in individuals over time, meaning it's progressive and the symptoms become stronger and you experience more memory loss, you're having more and more difficulties thinking or problem solving over time, again, as dementia progresses from one state and gets worse as it impacts the brain cells. And often there's a misconception that, oh, my grandma's getting old, she's forgetful, she must have dementia. We throw out this term dementia all the time for the second we see an older adult having memory loss. But in reality, it's super important to remember dementia is not a normal part of aging. Over 40% of folks who are 65 and older experience some form of memory loss in their life. And when there's no underlying medical conditions, such as dementia, it is simply known as age-associated memory impairment. So we need to remember just because an individual has memory loss when they're in the older stages of life doesn't necessarily mean dementia. So it's important that we recognize the differences when we're supporting our older adults. And there's many risk factors that can increase the diagnosis, or sorry, your chances of being diagnosed with dementia. These include things such as high blood pressure and smoking, different neurodegenerative diseases, vascular diseases, traumatic brain injuries, as well as things like stress and mental trauma and social isolation, and many other factors. However, we don't actually know what the root cause of dementia is. We just know there are factors that can increase your chances of a dementia diagnosis, but we don't actually know what causes it itself. And despite not knowing that what actually causes it, we are seeing an increase of people across the world and here in Canada who are living with dementia. So by 2030, it is estimated that 1 million people in Canada will live with dementia, with a growth of 187% over the next 30 years of that population. So present day, that's costing our healthcare system over $10 billion a year. So it's only going to increase as the number of people are living with dementia. So it's something that we need to navigate and figure out how do we better support folks living with dementia, as it's only going to cost more and more, and there's going to be more people living with dementia. So switching gears just for a slide, we have an aging 2SLGBI population. This is the first time in our history that we have openly queer and trans Canadians reaching their older adult years. According to the last census, 7% of 2SLGBI folks are over the age of 65. So that group of folks, they're not just 2SLGBI people, they're folks who live through some of the most important historical moments for queer and trans Canadians, including historical discrimination, living through times where it was illegal just to be gay, where you would go to the bar and be arrested and attacked. But they also lived through some amazing victories that we've seen, such as the right to same-sex marriage and many, many other things, including human rights wins. And Egale has been part of a lot of these wins as well. And what's interesting is that research shows that 2SLGBI adults have been found to have higher rates of cognitive impairment when compared to heterosexual or cisgender folks. So that begs the question, why are trans and queer folks at a higher risk for dementia? So as I mentioned in 2 slides ago, queer and trans folks of the past have experienced huge amounts of discrimination, and even present day, we still remain targets of a lot of hate. So 2SLGBI people have been impacted by victimization and discrimination at high rates. And this is something known as minority stress. So it's high levels of stress faced by members of stigmatized minority groups or equity-seeking groups, whatever language you prefer, and it's over time, so chronic. So folks who experience minority stress or just lifelong social inequity experience health disparities at higher rates. And these include things like cardiovascular disease, depression, and all these different conditions that were listed under the dementia risks that lead to premature cognitive decline and in turn dementia. And it's important to remember that folks are more than just 2SLGBTQI. They also have things like race and socioeconomic status and ethnicity and immigration status and language barriers. So all these intersectional factors can increase lifelong social inequity and chronic minority stress, which again can increase your chances for having things like cardiovascular disease, which in turn can increase your risk for premature cognitive decline. So once a 2SLGBI person has a dementia diagnosis, what are those specific challenges that they're facing that their cisgender and heterosexual counterparts are not? Well, we know that they're experiencing things like refused care. So having a social service worker or a healthcare professional saying, I don't work with gay people. They're being misgendered. Maybe that's using the wrong pronouns or calling them by their dead name. Lack of a gender affirmation, that can be refusing someone hormone therapy just because of their age. It could be not allowing them to present themselves, whether that's through makeup or clothes or other, just because that's not how the social service professional or healthcare professional sees them. We see a recognition or lack thereof of significant others, often seeing things like, that can't be your wife, that's your sister or roommate, and many, many more challenges that are specific to 2SLGBTQI people living with dementia. But let's dive a little bit more into the recognition of significant others. Excuse me. So for a 2SLGBI person who has a same-sex partner, we often will see things such as they're seen as a sibling or friend, or that partner will experience queerphobia. If they have a gender diverse partner, they could be misgendered or experience transphobia. So If you're at an appointment, maybe the suicidal person living with dementia is referring to their partner, and the doctor refers to them as the wife, even though the partner is non-binary. And then we also have chosen family. So for those who this is a new concept, this is family members, sometimes also called found family, who are chosen intentionally to be family. Those who are intentionally chosen to be love and support folks in someone's life, regardless of marriage, regardless of legal status, regardless of blood relationships. So the problem with that is within a very bureaucratic healthcare system and a very legal healthcare system, it can get quite challenging when it comes to recognizing chosen family as a carer or support for a 2S person living with dementia. And this is especially true when we look at something called a power of attorney. So a power of attorney for personal care is a legal document that gives someone the power to make decisions about your personal care. So when we think of someone with dementia, someone who at some point in their life is going to have a cognitive deficit where they're not going to be able to make their own healthcare choices, they need to have a power of attorney that says this other person can make decisions about my health for me. But the problem with that is that unless you have that legal document, a medical practitioner will likely look to get direction from blood relatives or folks who have legal status. This could be spouses, parents, children, anyone else who they think is more relevant than a chosen family member. As we know, 2S LGBTQI people often have challenges with blood family members, especially when those who have chosen family. This can create really tense relationships and decision-making processes. It's also challenging for queer and trans folks as we're overrepresented when it comes to low income. So accessing legal support to write power of attorney documents is super challenging. So all different things to think about when we're looking at the recognition of significant others for 2S people living with dementia, and it's just layered and layered on top of each other. So as this presentation is for Elder Abuse Ontario, I thought it was important for us to look into when does this become elder abuse? If we look at the definition of elder abuse from the World Health Organization, they define it as a single or repeated act or lack of appropriate action occurring with any relationship where there is an expectation of trust which causes harm or distress to an older person. And it often occurs when there's an imbalance in control. So a possible example could be a doctor refuses to use they, them pronouns, recognize someone's gender. This, we know, causes distress and harm to a non-binary person living in dementia, and in turn could be elder abuse. And all these different things, and there's very specific elements we would have to investigate on a case-by-case basis, but lack of gender affirmation, not recognizing significant others, having transphobia, queerphobia, refusing care, misgendering, all of these could be elder abuse. So it's important to make sure that you are calling it out and making sure that you are supporting people living with dementia, as it is more than just a queer issue, it is elder abuse. And I wanted to pull a quote from Egale's research that really kind of encompasses what's going on and what we need to do. So this quote says, "I don't know that there's enough education on what it means to be queer and to have dementia. We as a population are people. We're just people. We should be treated as people and loved as people." So everything I just went through, in summary, you could define as the Canadian healthcare system is not equipped for 2S LGBTI people living with dementia. And because of that, we need all of you on this call to help us help queer people and trans people and 2S LGBTI people living with dementia remain ourselves. And that's where Egale put together a campaign called Help Us Remain. So this bilingual national campaign was supported by the Public Health Agency of Canada and in partnership with the National Institute on Aging, as well as Fondation Emergence, to address the heightened risk of cognitive decline within our communities and bring attention to the often overlooked struggles faced by queer and trans people living with dementia. And by focusing on this issue, we strive to create a more inclusive and supportive healthcare system for everyone, not just 2S LGBTI people, but everyone as a whole. So I'm going to play the short film that was the key piece of this campaign. So it's about 3 minutes long. For those of you who have not seen it, it is quite emotional. So when the video is done, feel free to take a moment to catch your breath, grab some water. We'll be talking about the other elements of the campaign right after. I'm also going to turn on the closed captioning. It's auto-generated, so it might not be accurate 100%, but I will play the video for folks.
More and more, I find myself lost in the memories of a life I've led.
Son, time to go.
Now you are going to be administering the dose yourself by injecting right about here.
Who's that on the phone, hon?
I don't know. It's okay.
Hello?
Time slips through my fingers like sand.
Mr. Lai. Mr. Lai, the lesson is on the board.
And with it, the things that once defined me.
We're just worried about you.
The moments that made me who I am start to drift away.
You look beautiful.
And while my mind might fade, there is a hope within me that I shall remain.
I feel like a woman inside this shell of a man.
As you're aware, there's currently no working cure for dementia. And your friend's illness is progressing.
My wife. She's my wife, doctor.
We'll get you to fill out this form, and when you're done, you can bring it to the desk.
Thank you.
These fragments of a life seem far away, as if they belong to someone else.
You want to go to the back?
Actually, okay.
But the person I've always been, resilient, kind, loving, is a thread connecting it all.
That's why you won't let me medically transition.
What about what I need?
It shouldn't have to be this hard.
Let's get you home now, love. Okay?
And however frayed that thread might be, it's there.
How are you doing today?
Where am I?
This is the third time you've forgotten to give her dosage. It's unacceptable.
Even though the world around me may blur
Yeah, I missed you.
and distort and shrink itself,
It's lonely at home without you.
I hold on.
There we go. Okay, so that was the video or the short film that we had as part of the campaign, and it was the anchor piece throughout everything that we had for Help Us Remain. And as you can see, for 2 young people, our lives are not just certain moments. It's not just a one-time coming out. It's not just a one-time love. It's not just a one-time experience. So it's a life that has many moments and stories, and it's something that we always have to remember is to look back on our histories and what contributes to someone's story. And that was a very powerful story, and although it's based on many true experiences, we also wanted to make sure that we had the storytelling power throughout the campaign of real life folks in Canada, real life folks in Canada who are impacted by dementia. So on the egale.ca website, so egale.ca/dementia, you can hear 10 real stories. So they're about 3 minutes in length. And their stories not only explore concerns around cognitive decline and dementia, both from the people living with dementia, but also their carers. But these stories also explore folks who have lived through moments through Canadian queer history, whether it's creating the first Pride event in Halifax or fighting for adoption rights for lesbians. We have all these really beautiful stories, and it's personally one of my favorite elements of the campaign. So I highly recommend listening to all those stories. If you enjoyed the video as much as I did, the stories are even more impactful. And to continue the power of storytelling, last week, Egale hosted an immersive audio gallery in Toronto's queer community center called the 519. So we hosted an event called the Gallery of Memories. So what's at stake for 2SLGI people living with dementia? So this was an event that took those audio stories, but merged them with photography. So those folks who are providing their stories also provided photos to go with them. So you can see in the photo of the two older gentlemen standing in front of the photo, that's actually one of the gentlemen in the greenish coat. That's actually him in the photo as well. Being able to be present and talk about his story of being at Hanlon's Point in Toronto, which is a queer cultural beach, and then talking about the significance of that and then what it's like to live with dementia. So we had this beautiful event. Lots of folks came out, and it really sparked conversation to inspire understanding dementia, prompt action for more inclusive healthcare, and much more. And the event was also open, or the gallery itself was open the following 2 days as well, so the public could go and enjoy the gallery. As I mentioned, this was a national bilingual campaign as well. So we were very thankful that we were able to get a social media campaign out across the country, do national what's called out-of-home ads. So those are things like bus shelters and billboards. As you can see on the right, we had a bus shelter ad in downtown Toronto. We also had cities like Vancouver and Montreal and Halifax. And we also made sure that we promoted Egale's dementia-related resources as well throughout the campaign. So we've now talked about what research says, what are the problems, what Egale has done to raise awareness. So let's talk about how we together can create an inclusive future for 2SLGA people living with dementia. So what needs to change? How do we combat cis-hetero dementia care in this country? So first, I just want to reference the amazing report that Egale, in partnership with the National Institute on Aging, released back in 2022. So it looked at trying to better understand the experience and perspectives of 2SLGA people living with dementia, but also their primary unpaid caregivers. So unpaid caregivers are folks who don't get paid and they are caring for someone living with dementia. So this could be partners, children, nieces, nephews, friends, chosen family, anyone who is supporting a person with dementia. And the findings of this report are the basis for basically everything that Egale has been doing over the past couple of years related to dementia. So that's creation of our resources, our advocacy initiatives, as well as the Help Us Remain campaign. So there's 4 calls to actions that our report asks for. So the first is to build 2SLGA inclusive dementia-related services and community spaces. This includes integrating discussions about dementia into existing queer and trans support and social groups, and creating more opportunities for 2SLGBTQI people living with dementia to come together and support in community. So making sure that we have, when there's all of these queer and trans support groups, that dementia becomes a topic. When we have, and the other way around as well, when we have dementia-related groups, we have a queer and trans perspective within those. Our second call to action is increasing recognition and support for primary unpaid carers of 2SLGI people living with dementia. So as I mentioned, unpaid carers, folks who support those living with dementia, but don't get paid. And up to 75% of care services for older adults in Canada are unpaid carers. And that's for folks who are living at home. And in 2020, that was about $25 billion of care every single year that was being offered unpaid. So we want to make sure that we are increasing recognition of these diversely situated carers in workplaces and government. So looking at ways that there could be policies and employment leaves, creating dedicated spaces such as support groups for these carers as well. All things about better supporting and recognizing our unpaid carers. Third, we want to make sure that we are enhancing supports for 2S LGBTI communities and carers through structural and system level changes. So this is making sure that folks who live in rural, remote, and small town communities can access dementia-related care. And as I talked about, making sure that we are talking about histories and experiences. I talked a little bit about minority stress and the experiences that 2S LGBTI older adults have lived through, making sure those histories and experiences are core parts of healthcare and social service training, so they understand where their clients, their patients, their residents are coming from. Fourth, we want to broaden perspectives and deepen community engagement for future critical research. So we would do that, or we need to do this by building rapport, trust, and accountability with 2S LGBTI communities, community members, and examining the peculiarities of living in suburban, rural, and remote areas. We also want to make sure that we are decentering whiteness when it comes to all this work, making sure that we are welcoming, learning, and listening from Indigenous communities, Black communities, racialized communities, as well as 2S LGBTI people who are Indigenous, Black, and racialized, and living with dementia. So as I mentioned, Egale's research has helped create a whole bunch of really wonderful resources that can help you create 2S LGBTI inclusive dementia care. One resource that is kind of our flagship resource is Acting in Allyship. So this is a guiding principle resource for healthcare and social service professionals. And it's a guidebook that has 5 guiding principles on how you can better support not just 2S LGBTI people living dementia, but the primary caregivers as well. And if you're not a healthcare professional social service provider, or maybe that document's just a bit too high level for you and you're just looking for some quick tips, we have this document, which is how to be an ally to 2S LGBTI people living with dementia. So it's 10 quick little tips, such as talk directly to me, don't talk as if I'm not there, don't make assumptions about my relationships or care networks based on my sexual orientation, things like that. So it's a really quick little guide, but very impactful as well. Nice to Meet You is a resource that is super beneficial for 2S LGBTI people when they're meeting with healthcare professionals and social service providers. So it's a form available English and French that folks can fill out to let their healthcare provider, social service provider know everything that they need to know about them. So their legal name they go by, pronouns or accessibility needs, information about those who are joining them in their healthcare appointments, things like that. So it's a really good summary document for appointments. If e-learning is more your learning style, our learning department has created some fabulous introduction courses, all answering the question, what can you do to better support 2S LGBTI people living with dementia? So there were 45 to 60 minutes each to complete, and we have one for unpaid carers and one for healthcare and social service professionals. So highly recommend taking those. They're free to take as well. And there's something great that you can also pass off to unpaid carers if they're navigating dementia of their partner for the first time. And also with the National Institute on Aging, Egale launched a couple years ago the National Resource Center on 2S LGBTI Aging, or as we call internally, the NRCA. So if you're thinking, oh, Egale's resources on dementia are great, but what about other older adult issues? Well, this resource houses information, resources, research, news, a whole bunch of different pieces, not just from Egale and the NIA, but right across the country in both English and French. So feel free to explore that website. There's a whole bunch of fantastic pieces on there. And for anyone who's listening and they have resources and you're like, oh, it would be great if it's on that site, there's also a form that you can fill out to submit it so we can review to put it on the site. And as I mentioned, Egale does more than just dementia work when we talk about supporting to us for older adults. So I just wanted to cover briefly what that could look like. So we have a report that was released last fall called Aging and Living Well, which looks at exactly as the title says, how 2S LGBTI people can age and live well better. We have a whole bunch of different resources on our website. So you can go to egale.ca/resources. There's anything from gender and sexual diversity 101 type resources to how to support someone coming out. Basically anything that you need is on that webpage. Egale also offers training. So for those of you who have regular trainings or one-off trainings for your workplaces, Egale can help provide that education for you. Two courses that might be relevant is our workplace inclusion for gender and sexual diversity. That's our 101 type introduction training. And for those of you who are mental health and social service providers, we also have a training that's specific to that audience as well as about 6 other courses. So take a look at our website if you're interested in bringing Egale on for training. We also have our learning department working tirelessly on a whole bunch of different e-learning products for healthcare and social service providers launching this year. So as I mentioned, we have our Aging and Living Well research report. The findings from that report are being turned into an e-learning offering. Similarly, we have Query Mental Health, so how mental health providers can better support 2S LGBTI patients and clients. And then we're also developing healthcare professional specific e-learning training on supporting intersex clients as well. And if you want to make sure that you're staying up to date on these resources, everything else that Egale does, make sure you go to egale.ca/subscribe to sign up to our monthly newsletter. And in summary of this presentation, you can help us remain, so help 2S people living with dementia remain by learning about our experiences living with dementia. You can educate yourself on ways to make dementia care and healthcare more inclusive, and you can take action and advocate for more resources and supports for 2S LGBTI people living with dementia and their unpaid caregivers. So that is my presentation. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for helping us remain, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you so much for that informative presentation. I know I just learned quite a bit during your session. So just a reminder for people to put in questions in the Q&A box. And that video was extremely powerful, as people mentioned in the chat box as well. So, you know, I think sometimes those visuals really bring light to the issues that we are talking about and trying to educate people for change. So there was one question: are there virtual groups for caregivers? That's being asked. So do you host virtual groups for caregivers? I think that might be what's being asked.
Egale does not, but there are several virtual groups for caregivers kind of around the country. So I know there's a couple of community-based organizations and social service groups in this call. So feel free to pop those in the chat. But Egale does not at this time, but our website, the NRCA website, it does refer to a whole bunch of different organizations that would likely host support groups like that.
Great. Oh, there's another question, sorry. Do you have suggestions as to how healthcare leaders could use these resources to for their team education? Like, how can they use those to, you know, maybe approaches that they could use to educate their team members about this? Or I know you mentioned about e-learning is available, but is there other maybe approaches that you think have been effective in your experience?
Yeah, I would just recommend just letting your staff know at a minimum that these resources exist, making sure that if they have any specific questions, you're reaching out to organizations like Egale to see how we can support you. Maybe we have existing resources. We're always developing resources for different gaps that there may be, bringing Egale in for training for your next workshop, things like that. As Renee mentioned, our e-learning training is a really good introduction. So if you are a healthcare and social service provider, just having your staff take that free training as an introduction is a really great start.
I think too is I know that there's posters that have been, developed for this campaign. Even putting those around your organization or your facilities, lunchrooms, it does get people starting to talk about issues that some people may not want to or feel comfortable kind of talking about until someone sort of sees something and starts initiating conversation. There's also the 519, I think, also has some groups for seniors. I know that they do in terms of work that they've been doing. Your colleague has been posting some great resources for the family caregivers. The Ontario Caregivers Association has caregiver support online as well as on phone, that they support individuals as well as Family Services Toronto. So there are some resources out there for individuals within, I know we're talking GTA area, but we can, help people find some resources if you're looking for those as well, depending on where you reside. Someone was just asking, can you repeat the information on the guide on how caregivers and partners communicate?
Rita, could you rephrase that question in the chat, please? I'm not sure if I know the specifics.
So in the Q&A, it says, can you repeat the information on the guide on how caregivers partners communicate? I'm not sure if that means to communicate to like staff persons if you're concerned about maybe how the care of their loved one, or maybe we can ask Rita to maybe clarify that for us. I'll just go to the next question while they put that in. Oh, how do they speak to their loved ones?
How to speak to loved ones. Yeah, so on our website, so again, egale.ca/dementia. At the bottom of the webpage, there's all the resource links to our dementia resources. So I believe you're referring to the one resource, excuse me, that's like the 10 tips. So that resource is there. So there's a couple of different suggestions for anyone who's communicating with people living with dementia. There's also that form that is super helpful as well, that partners can fill out when going to appointments. So that form has a section that specifically has the name of the partner, the relationship to the person living with dementia, and some other info. So highly recommend looking at those resources.
There's just another question, again, sort of around education. Do you have any training sessions about supporting 2S LGBTQI seniors who come through our doors, but also effectively educating the non-2S LGBTQ seniors who are not as inclusive? So I'm assuming they may be in care homes that this person might be referring to.
For the person who wrote this question, if you could do a follow-up on like what type of training sessions. We don't have any training sessions at this moment that specifically educate seniors directly, other than our kind of general resources that anyone can take about what is inclusion, what does it mean to be supportive and be an ally. So that could be a way to help folks who are not as inclusive, but just as a starting point. For seniors as a whole, we do have a variety of resources outside of what I covered on our website as well. So we have a resource that talks about like care planning and will planning for 2SOGI older adults as well. So it's not dementia specific, but it is a really great resource for 2SOGI older adults to access.
Great, thank you. And I know there was just another comment or question about what resources are available to explain the acronyms that you're referring to. Some people had not heard of Two-Spirited or Intersex. And I know on your website, there is one resource that explains all the acronyms, because I just came by that about 2 seconds ago when I was on your website. So we can post that in the links as well. If your colleague is maybe be able to get that up onto the chat box as well. And I'm just waiting to see if there's any other questions. I know there's been work also more GTA area, but the long-term care homes in Toronto, they had, in collaboration with many community partners, including Egale, had done a toolkit for long-term care homes about being inclusive to us LGBT seniors, and it's a great resource as well, which I will post for individuals to access as well. Gives great tools and tips for individuals within that specific sector to find information, and it may just sort of works collaboratively with the work that you're doing here.
Yeah, thanks for that. My colleague Dennis also posted in the webinar chat as well that Aging and Living Well report that I mentioned. We have a webinar in February taking place that does explore all that research. So if you are looking to see what that report talks about, what our findings are, Dennis has popped the link in the chat there. So please feel free to sign up for that.
Great. And I know our organization also collaborated with Egale, and we did a webinar on financial abuse and to us LGBT seniors as well, and with the Learning Network past July. So I can post that for individuals if they're interested in viewing that research as well. Well, I know we're getting to the end. If there's no other questions, I'm just going to share my screen. Just to show some follow-up resources. Oops, sorry. If I can go to. I'm just going to skip slides for a second. Apologize. So I was just saying some of the resources that we additionally have. I was saying that Leading with Pride, Leading and Learning with Pride from the City of Toronto. This is the webinar that we did on elder financial abuse and LGBTQI communities, and we also have a module which needs to be updated, but we do have a module that we developed a while back on LGBT and LGBT communities as well. So we do have resources on our website. Again, these are some of the links that were already shared today. Again, I will post those onto our website after the recording recording of the webinar. We mentioned a couple of supports, the 519 that AJ mentioned. So there's the phone number and website. There's also many Pride networks across Canada. So there's this one I just highlighted was the Toronto Pride Network, but there's also Rainbow Health Ontario that has a lot of resources and information as well, more health specific and social issues that they post on. And then we are talking about dementia, so I encourage people, if they have questions or need support in their communities, to reach out to the Alzheimer's Society of Ontario or their home and community care through the healthcare teams to get support in their homes if they need that. And I believe your colleague mentioned about the Family Services Toronto, where they do have counseling and support services available, and a shelter through Pat's Place. They do have accommodations for individuals who are experiencing abuse, who need to leave and see situations for safety. And then if people are interested in accessing some legal supports, we have the Advocacy Center for the Elderly in Ontario, as well as AJ was referring to, powers of attorney. The Office of the Public Guardian and Trustee is a good resource if there are abuse issues happening in terms of the person having dementia and they're living at risk. You can, speak with them or consult with them on if they could get involved and assist you in the situation. And then there's some other resources here in terms of legal family mediation, human rights tribunal, if that's a situation that someone may be in. And then the Law Society Referral Service does provide short 30 minutes of free legal advice. If you were to go online and submit your information, they would link you up to a lawyer within the jurisdiction that you live. And if a situation is urgent and someone needs policing, we do encourage people to call the police if it's that they need support or they're at significant risk of harm. In Toronto and many regional police's services, not only within Ontario but other across Canada, have officers that deal directly with seniors issues. So we'd encourage you to reach out and collaborate as agencies, to collaborate to find out who those policing partners are if the situation arises where you do need their support. Just as a reminder, we are hosting, talking about risk and elder abuse and situations that might escalate. We are doing some risk assessment training for frontline providers who are doing intervention to support seniors. We are hosting one next week, which is sold out, and we are hosting our next one on April 30th. That information will be coming out soon. We are full for this one, but we will be doing another 3-day session, April 30th, May 1st, and 3rd. And then lastly, just that reminder of the evaluation, as we just take a couple minutes to fill that out at the end of the session. We would appreciate that. I indicated I provide our contact information. We are on social media. We do promote the campaign that AJ is talking about. It's so important that we do collaborate and send out these messages, especially through Alzheimer's Awareness Month. And I know my colleague Benedict Chafflon from the Canadian Network for the Prevention of Elder Abuse is online, and they've just promoted the campaign and their work across Canada. So in their newsletter. So we do appreciate our collaboration and hope to continue working with yourself and your organization, as well as many partners who are here today at our webinar. So thank you again, AJ, for your time. Thank you, our ASL interpreters, and for everyone who took the time to participate today. Please go to the website for Egale Canada. Check out all the resources. There are other videos that are extremely impactful as well. Use those in your training and outreach and access some of those tools and resources to help you in your work ahead. So thank you and have a great day, everyone.